The year was 2016. Wizards had just announced a new Commander product that was going where no Commander deck had ever gone before, officially. 4 colored Commanders. The 5 Precon decks out of Commander 2016 brought not only a slew of powerful partner commanders that could be endlessly combined to create countless combinations of crazy commander constructions, but it also brought 5 legendary creatures that for the first time in Magic's history had exactly 4 colors. This brought a whole new complexity to deck design, as these decks not only looked at what those colors can do, but what implications would come from leaving out one color from the card's design. We had Brea, Ethereum Sculptor, a powerful artifact commander who brought combo synergies in her non-green colors. Yidris, Maelstrom Wielder, brought Cascading Chaos and Devilish Disorder in his non-white colors. Saskia the Unyielding brought unwavering aggression to the table in her non-blue colors. Kineo Sentiro of Meletis brought unwavering love and support in their non-black colors. But the 5th commander, who was the non-red commander known as Atraxa Praetor's Voice, brought with her something different. She had 4 keyword abilities and an end-step Proliferate trigger. Something about her felt more open-ended than the other 4 commanders from this set. Her colors were more flexible, more powerful, her abilities more lethal. So much so, she managed to climb her way up to become the most popular commander of all time, according to EDHREC's compiled data. We've taken several looks at Atraxa Praetor's Voice throughout the years, and with the coming of Phyrexia, All Be One, we have a ton of new cards and strategies that have compelled me to take one more look at this card. I hope you'll stay tuned and see what we have in store. Many of us are no strangers to Atraxa Praetor's Voice. Her keyword soup has Flying, Vigilance, Death Touch, and Lifelink. At your end step, you get a Proliferate trigger. These make her a brutal threat in combat, and her Proliferate makes her a brilliant choice for decks such as Infect or Planeswalkers. Her colors give her access to perhaps the best assortment of cards of any of these 4 colored legends. Now, I've grown very fond of Infect decks over the years. I've been recently exploring what the best approach to the strategy is, and so I'm going to be using Atraxa to once again push my deck building skills to the limits and see just how viable Infect can be. See, one of the greatest flaws in an Infect strategy is how overly reliant it is on its creatures. Many creatures that have Infect and now Toxic are small and frail. They only have 1 or 2 power and toughness, and so this can make it difficult to get through your opponent's defenses, and considering you have to fend off 3 players who will undoubtedly be trying to kill you off first, well, getting 10 counters on each player can be tricky. My strategy for this deck is to seek alternate means to get poison counters onto opponents that don't specifically rely on combat, and then utilizing Proliferate triggers to bolster that poison counter up to 10 for each player. I'm hoping this deck list today can serve us and our Phyrexian overlords well. The main card that we want to see hit the battlefield is Icarats. This 3-drop rat gives each player a poison counter upon it entering the battlefield, and so to that end, we will be using the large assortment of tutor abilities to ensure that this hits play early on. We also have Skrelv, the Defector Mite, in our 1-drop slot. This card is a Mother of Rune style effect where it grants Toxic 1 and Hexproof unblockability from a color until the end of turn. This is great to add on to another creature that we can get more damage through, as it ensures that those poison counters are in fact being given out. We can also use it as an alternative to both Mother and Giver of Runes, as it having Toxic 1 means we can actually use it to attack should the opportunity present itself. Bloated Contaminator is a 4/4 with Trample and Toxic 1 for 3 mana. That's a ton of value for a 3-drop, and given it having Trample, we are almost certain to get some damage through and by extension those poison counters. This is the only creature I will ever regularly send into combat, as the rest serve as the support role. In addition to the Icarats, we do a number of cards that give each opponent a poison counter. Infectious Bite can function as creature removal, and even if it doesn't actually kill the other creature, it will still give each opponent a poison counter. Prologue to Phyrexia is a cantrip that also gives each opponent a poison counter. So if we can't go the usual line with the Icarats, we do still have alternatives. Vraska's Fall is an edict effect, and it can be used to clear up a few problem cards. 3 cards being sacrificed for 3 mana is a really good trade, but the added poison counter is even more value on top. And these cards being instants also allows us to hold them up for some last minute surprises. Phyrexia Outbreak doubles as a pointer counter distributor as well as a potential board wipe. We also run both Flux Channeler and Evolution Sage, 2 absolute behemoths for Proliferate decks. The Flux Channeler will give us a Proliferate with each non-creature spell we cast, and given that our deck has 50 non-creature spells in it, that should be easy. The Evolution Sage can give us a Proliferate off of our landfall, so as long as we're hitting our land drops per turn, well, there you go. Yawgmoth Thran Physician is a great source for Proliferate and card draw, so if we need to really push for more Proliferate triggers, we can easily make it work so long as we have the black mana and cards in hand. Lastly, at the top of our curve is the Phyrexian Swarmlord, who at the beginning of our upkeep gives us a 1/1 Phyrexian Insect with Infect for each poison counter that our opponents have. This can be a great endgame move, especially using an instant speed tutor like Court of Calling that will drop it right into play. This is another great way to pivot from a very passive and reactive playstyle into a brief but effective aggro, as our swarm of infectious creatures may easily overwhelm opponents, giving us the win. White Sun's Twilight is also in here, being perhaps my favorite token producer nowadays. You gain life, which is a valuable buff in the deck that's obviously going to draw a lot of aggression towards you. You create tokens that have toxic ones, so you're getting into the strategy of Infect. And should you pay 5 or more mana for the X part of the cost, you destroy all other creatures, making this a potential win con right on its own, as your opponents will now have to rebuild their board while you're sitting pretty with an army of mites. We also run quite a few control cards to help deal with the aggression that we will inevitably draw using Infect cards. The obvious includes of Ghostly Prison, Propaganda, Authority of the Consuls, Blind Obedience, are now also joined by the new Norn's Decree, a powerful enchantment that gives players poison counters for attacking us and then incentivizing them to attack each other should those other players be poisoned. Smothering Tithe, Mystic Remora, and Rhystic Study are all here to deter too much extension by our opponents, and they can result in us either accumulating a large sum of treasure tokens or a few additional card draws. Drannith Magistrate has largely become a staple in nearly all of my white decks, as I enjoy being able to shut off my opponent's ability to use their commander. Esper Sentinel is somewhat a redundancy on Mystic Remora, but I will happily take another card draw or 2 per rotation. Opposition Agent neuters opponent's tutor effects, just another good stuff card to help support our strategy going off without a hitch. When your opponent goes to tutor for the thing that will deal with us the best, well, we'll have something to say about it. So the main plan of this deck is to get at least 1 poison counter onto each opponent, either through attacking with an infect or toxic creature, or using one of our spells that distributes poison counters, then using the Proliferate triggers to bulk that up to 10. We play defensively. We do not push for attacks unless we can follow through with some additional Proliferate. We have our commander at the ready to come down and give us an additional Proliferate trigger each turn as well if we need to. We have plenty of interaction and removal should we need to pick off cards coming our way. Our tutors are there to get the cards that will speed things up. We want Flux Channeler, we want Icarats, we need to get that ball rolling quickly. We want this game to be as fast as we can because the longer that we take to get our strategy off, the more our opponents will be able to develop a board state that can overwhelm us. Now, if we do need to win quicker, we do have an alternative. Part of me feels like this is a bit of a cop-out, but it is a potent enough strategy that I wanted to include in this deck to really ensure that I have a surefire way of winning, even if the Infect strategy fails. This strategy is relatively simple. We're utilizing the classic Thassa's Oracle and Demonic Consultation that I am absolutely plagiarizing from the competitive EDH community. The combo plays out like this. You cast the Thassa's Oracle, whose end of the battlefield trigger goes on the stack. We then cast Demonic Consultation, which will resolve first. You name a card not in your deck, and when it resolves, you reveal the top 6 cards of your library. oh no, that named card, it's not in there. So then you continue to filter through the remainder of your library. Since it's not in there, the whole library gets exiled. Well, Thassa's Oracle's ability will now resolve, and since our devotion to blue is greater than the number of cards left in our library, we win the game. We can use cards like Silence or Grand Abolisher to ensure that we're going to have minimal obstructions to our combo. I hope you've been enjoying our explorations through this series of Phyrexian decks. Atraxa was one of my favorite cards ever for the longest time. I love her color combination. I'm not a fan of red, so her being everything but red was really fun. I loved Infect, and her being very viable for Infect just made her the golden goose. And I really wanted to work on improving the efficiency and viability of Infect as a strategy and commander. There are a lot of really good cards out there that we now have at our disposal, but I think the majority of Infect and Toxic cards being relatively weak in comparison, we need to really sift through for the best, most optimized version that will still be able to win. I think the problem for the most part, for the longest time, is an Infect deck largely mimics the strategy used by the modern counterpart, with huge power boosts to one-shot players using tiny creatures like Glistening Elf. I think this really made it less effective in multiplayer settings, as you really can only take out one opponent before the rest of the table succeeded in ganging up on you. This strategy, while a lot more tuned up than most of my other builds, I think really does have the potential to win, even if we have to revert to a quick, brutal plan B. I hope you enjoyed this revisit for Atraxa Praetor's Voice. The Atraxa decks were some of my more popular videos back in the day, and I'm curious if you'd like to see me revisit other decks I've built on this channel in the past when I was less confident in my deck building skill. Let me know in the comments below, and as always, thank you for sticking around. I'll see you next time.